They're claiming there's a famine in Gaza, but what if I could show you that this is a lie?
In Gaza, we are no longer on the brink of famine. We are in a state of famine.
This is the highest number of people facing catastrophic hunger ever recorded by the Integrated Food Security Classification System.
Some prominent politicians have gone as far as accusing Israel of deliberately creating a famine.
A famine that is being intentionally precipitated through the blocking of food and global humanitarian assistance by leaders in the Israeli government.
I'm now going to show how none of this is true. The IPC identifies the severity of food crises and determines when a crisis escalates to a famine. And this is how the UN defines famine.
Famine is a technical term. We say there is a famine when three conditions come together. First, at least 20% of the population in that particular place must be facing extreme levels of hunger. Second, 30% of the children in the same place must be wasted. And the third condition is that the mortality rate must double from the average of, for adults, 1 person per 10,000 per day to 2 people per 10,000 per day. When these three conditions come together, we say it's a famine.
So now you know what they consider a famine. You'll be surprised to hear that way back in November, the IPC had already declared there was a famine in Gaza. They claimed it was affecting 377,000 people. Then in February, they upgraded this to 677,000 and then again to 1.1 million in March. So if there were 2 deaths for every 10,000 of these people, there should have been over 30,000 adults dying from malnutrition. But this never happened. Contrary to the IPC's claim, Israel has actually facilitated the transfer of over 500,000 tons of aid into Gaza. Just look at these markets, they're filled with food. In fact, there's so much aid reaching Gaza that when America airdropped food into the Strip, many locals filmed themselves destroying it to show that they didn't want nor need American help. If there was a famine, would this be happening? But don't take my word for all of this. The IPC's Famine Review Committee just released a report explicitly stating that it was not plausible that northern Gaza had ended a famine in April. So when the UN and EU claimed otherwise, they were lying. The entire narrative was a fabrication. The IPC, which had claimed a famine as early as November, was now forced to admit there was no famine. In fact, their review committee went as far as saying that the previous analysis had undercounted the amount of aid in Gaza, explaining that private sector food trucks had been excluded. If these had been included, they would estimate that up to 157% of northern Gaza's caloric needs would have been met in April. Out of desperation to vilify Israel or to force a ceasefire, the lie of famine had spread like wildfire.
A significant proportion of Gaza's population is facing famine, full-blown famine in northern Gaza.
This lie has been spread to damage Israel's reputation, but it's a lie that's costing tax-paying Americans. Since October the 7th, America has wasted hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on unnecessary aid. For example, America built a floating pier to facilitate the flow of aid into Gaza, but it wasn't needed as there wasn't an issue of getting aid in. There were some internal distribution problems caused by the ongoing conflict, damaged roads and theft, but building a pier didn't solve any of these. And to make matters worse, the pier broke, so Americans paid $230 million for a pier that wasn't needed, didn't help, and didn't even work. Israel should be applauded for the incredible and continued efforts it's made to prevent a famine in Gaza, but instead, the IPC was weaponized and used to unjustly attack the world's only Jewish state.